creepy walk home from school.
Hello, I'm new on here, and reading recent posts, it inspired me to share something that happened to me about a month ago. I'm 14 years old, and I live with my grandma. My school is about a 4-minute walk from where her house is, and I was just getting out of school. I know almost everybody in my neighborhood. People are friendly, but mostly stay to themselves. When I cross the street to leave school, I make a left turn, and I have to walk all the way down, cross another street, making another left, and then again, walk the whole way down to my grandma's house. I usually go in the back, and her backyard is fenced in by a yellow gate. Anyways, I walked across the street from my school and made my first left. Nobody I know takes the same route as me, and from what I seen, nobody was around. I was on the phone texting my mom that I'd be home soon, when a guy who was about in his mid-30s stopped and asked me what I was doing. I was caught off guard and simply answered that I was walking home. I walked past him, but he quickly caught up to me and asked me if he could talk to me for a minute. He said he needed to use my phone because his car had broken down and he had no phone himself. He pointed to a black Honda behind him. I declined. I had to go home and he gave me bad vibes. He badly needed to shave and he was wearing faded blue jeans and a dirty black shirt. He pleaded, saying that he had somewhere important to be, and even attempted to grab my hand and take my phone from me. I walked away and he caught up again. He accused me of not believing him and offered to show me that his car was in fact broken down. He told me to follow him over, and I denied yet again. I wasn't even supposed to be talking to him right now, seeing as though he was a stranger. I told him that I was sorry and that I couldn't help him, and I jogged the rest of the way down, ready to cross the street, and I seen him walking in my direction again. Cars were coming, so I couldn't cross yet, and I prayed they would quickly pass so that I could cross. He approached me again, saying he badly needed to use my phone. Annoyed he was still bothering me, I went to give him my phone, but at that moment he instead grabbed my wrist and started dragging me quickly behind him. I screamed and he ended up letting go because a woman who was about 20 stopped her car and ran towards us. What creeped me out even more is that she was driving the black Honda that was supposedly his car and was broken down. He bolted down the street and turned down an alleyway. I thanked her for helping me, and she said she was calling the cops. A Hispanic man who lives around the corner from my grandma could clearly see I was distressed and walked up to me and the woman and asked about the situation. I explained what happened, and he pulled a folded flyer out of his pocket. This flyer turned out to be a wanted flyer, with that man's face on it. According to him, the cops have been looking for that man because he is a known sexual offender who had actually raped a young girl a few weeks ago. The search for him had been going on for months and nobody had found anything. I was terrified. I called my mom and she was angry, mad at me for talking to strangers and mad that he had the nerve to try and kidnap me. I didn't have much to tell the police other than the fact that he asked to use my cell phone and tried to force me to follow him. I don't know if they've caught this guy or not. I haven't heard much about him, and since they haven't came back to me for further investigation, I'm going to guess they haven't. I never seen him again, and my mom also doesn't allow me to walk to or from school by myself anymore. I hope they catch this guy soon, considering I'd hate to hear about another young girl getting taken advantage of.
mentally ill psychic I spent the day with 6 years ago.
I was on the train coming back from meeting a friend. I was reading a book on occult magic, and this older guy sat next to me and said, "What's that you're reading?" "I do magic too," and started chatting to me about all sorts. Occult areas in our town, Illuminati conspiracies. He was saying, "I can tell you're magic. I sensed it as I sat by you. I knew as soon as I boarded." He sounded really interesting with the things he was talking about. I felt really flattered and pleased with myself. I had been feeling lonely and down, and felt really proud of my power of attracting an interesting friend to chat to on the train who knew about occult stuff. I know it sounds seductive and creepy now, but he didn't seem creepy at all. He just seemed like a really intelligent, educated professor who was enthusiastic about magic and occult stuff, and to share his knowledge with someone. He seemed really wise sounding and spiritual, like a church pastor or Eckhart Tolle on TV. I just thought all my magic reading had manifested a new friend to chat to about stuff, so I agreed to meet with him for a coffee in the week. Also, he told me that he worked at the refugee center, and I told him I had applied for a job there, and he promised to get me in if I chatted to him. Anyway, I met him and did not enjoy it. He told me he was gay and used to be a boy prostitute. He was really flirty and creepy with me. He got me to walk to his house with him as he'd forgotten his wallet. His house was covered in letters from the local mental hospital, which I recognized as a friend gets them too, about meds and appointments, letters all over the floor and chairs. He had a picture of himself with blue scribbled round it, and he said, "You're psychic. You can see the blue psychic color." And he kept going on about my aura and giggling crazily and jumping up and down, waving around a dowsing stick that was snapped off an old aerial. Also, he had found a brand of liquor with his surname, and he bought loads of bottles of it and said that his Illuminati family made the drink and were millionaires but had cast him out. And he kept telling loads of stories about how he teaches psychic skill to the king of Saudi, and he was in hiding and he used to live in a castle in France with the Illuminati, etc. And he was saying, "I'm your messiah now. You need me to develop your skills. When I bring you back here, I'll take you upstairs and we can begin." And saying things like, "I need to know everything about you." I was scared and made an excuse to get away from him, and he was sad and crying. "I wanted to take you out for dinner and drinks tonight. I'm lonely." I was too scared and guilty to say I didn't want to see him again, so I just said I've got to go. He texted me that night with a list of philosophy books I need to read to start my learning. He didn't know anything about magic. He couldn't say more to me than just repeating, "I'm magic, but I can't tell you more till we begin training." He was really mentally ill. He kept talking for a half sentence, then giggling and forgetting what he was saying, trailing off all the time and muttering. I felt so dumb and disappointed. I know it sounds like I'm so naive, but he was so different when I met him. He just seemed like a calm, wise old professor who wanted to chat to someone about occult stuff. And he was saying on the train that he does work at the refugee center because he knows so much about Islam, and they all respect him. He sounded so clever and calm.
Was I kidnapped?
This happened about a year ago. A little info about myself. I'm a 19-year-old female. I am also very small. I am 4'11" and weigh 95 pounds, soaking wet. No, I don't have an eating disorder. My 11th grade year of high school is when this event took place. It was within the first 2 weeks of school, and I was a bus rider. We had a new bus driver. Me being a very social person, I always thanked him for his service and was always super nice to him. And I believe that's where I messed up. One day after school, I was riding the bus. I was always one of the first to be dropped off, so when I realized I had been on the bus for an extra 10 minutes, I was a little curious and just chalked it up to the fact that the bus routes get changed all the time. At this point, I must have been on the bus for about 30 minutes, and there are 2 kids left on the bus, an old friend of mine and of course myself. This friend of mine lived in a very remote location and there was absolutely no cell service out there, so when we dropped her off, I couldn't call my parents to let them know what was happening. As we were leaving this area, the bus driver pulled into a cemetery and told me to look out the window. When I did, I saw a torn to shreds baby deer. My whole body went into shutdown mode. I didn't know what to do. My initial reaction was to pull out my phone and call my parents when I remembered I had no signal. I immediately got up and ran to the back of the bus. Keep in mind, I'm the only kid on this bus. We sit by that deer for a good 10 minutes, and the whole time I'm in the back and my blood is absolutely boiling. It was everything in me not to run off that bus and look for help. When we started to leave, he just started talking about random stuff, like how he loves his wife and loves his new job as a bus driver. The whole time he's barely paying attention to the road. I get on my phone and go to Google Maps. Thank God they work even without service. I realized my house was 15 minutes from where we were, and I was super excited to be going home soon. Boy, was I wrong. This jackass then decides to take a shit ton of back roads and keep talking to me. The while time I'm sitting in silence still, with no service on my phone. So about 20 to 25 minutes later, I started seeing landmarks that are around my neighborhood. I look down and there's service on my phone. I immediately call my dad, and he doesn't answer. Not even 2 minutes later, we pull into my neighborhood and he drops me off at my house. I wanted to run, but for some reason I just stood in my yard and stared at him, frozen in fear. Eventually he pulled off, and when he did, I took off running into my house. My parents were in their room freaking out about where I was. My mom started grilling me about where I was and what I was doing. I get out of school at 2:15 and got home around 4:40ish. On a normal day I would get home at like 2:30, so my mom was very upset. My dad's phone was dead because he tried to call me so many times. I began to cry and tell them everything that happened. My dad was furious and called my school and used my mom's phone to record the whole conversation between my dad, the principal, and myself. My principal was extremely pissed off about what had taken place, as was my dad. My mother was just cuddling me and asking if I was okay and if anything else happened. I didn't go back to school for about 2 days. There was no formal investigation. The school handled it themselves. The bus driver denied everything, and when they checked the camera footage, the camera happened to be covered by a sticker or something of the sort. Thankfully, nobody believed the bus driver, and he was fired. I haven't rode a bus ever since. I know this isn't as creepy as most stories, but it's mine, and it's still the most bone-chilling experience I have ever had. So, creepy bus driver, Let's not meet for your sake.